Well, we asked and you answered. So today we are talking about clearing snare heads and figuring out which lugs are giving us trouble. Just a little while back, we dove into tuning toms and figuring out where we needed to place our attention when one or more of the lugs is out of tune. Today, we're dealing with snare drums because despite the fact that it is a drum on the same drum set, the behavior is significantly different. One of the primary factors that we're looking at here when we deal with snare drums is that generally speaking, they are tuned a whole lot higher than toms, even in a jazz setting. So this means for us that the behavior of the drum is going to be different, and sometimes isolating which lug is giving us grief can be a little bit tricky. Let's hear where we're at with this drum when we're starting out. This drum sounds all right, but it's not perfectly in tune. So let's go a little bit deeper. Let's listen to each lug individually, and we're going to fade in a sine wave at the overtone that we're looking for to identify where each one is at. We've now identified the highest and the lowest of each of the tension rods. Let's listen to those now. If you're enjoying what you're seeing today, please follow the link below to our Patreon. It's the best way to help us continue to make this show. It's a beautiful community over there and lots of extra content. As we wrap up season 5, we are looking to the future, getting really excited, and we need your help more than ever to continue to get to make this show. The tricky thing here is that as we've moved around the drum, it sounds like all of them are a little bit out of whack, when in reality, they are not completely out of tune. We've just adjusted one of them, and we need to identify which one that is. Oftentimes, a major misconception is that the lug that's exhibiting the most dissonance or wobble is the one that has the problem, but rather than go that route, we're going to take a different path. Where we want to start is identifying the lowest pitched lug and tune it up, because first of all, tuning down is a whole mess of problems. There's stiction and friction and confusion there. So whenever possible, we want to be tuning up from where a lug is at rather than the other way around. Now we're going to pitch that lug up about a half a turn and see where we end up with the whole drum. Okay, this is sounding nice. Let's move around the individual lugs now and see if we've gotten where we need to go. Please take a moment to like, comment, and subscribe to our channel, and do give us a story about any tuning experiences you've had where you were frustrated and you brought your drum back to what you were looking for. You may have noticed that we're doing some of these demos with snare wires turned off. Sometimes having them engaged can be a help, other times it can be a hindrance, but generally speaking, if I'm trying to get a drum in tune with itself, I'll leave the wires off and maybe periodically engage them to see if it sounds good when they are on. The scenario that we set up here is obviously manufactured. We chose a lug and detuned it to give you a clean demonstration of just how much of an effect a single one can have on the entire head. We're dealing with an amount of tension to where when we remove a note of pressure or change one of them like that, everything else is getting pulled in all sorts of directions that can start to make it seem like the whole drum is completely out of whack. In a real world situation, you may have one that's a little low, or there might be a much more spread out imbalance on the drum. However, the methodology still holds that we want to find the lowest and bring them up closer to the highest in an effort to just get them all to be the same. And once they are all the same, we can make global adjustments to where we want the drum to live. This means that if we're moving around the drum and hearing several that are low and several that are high, adjust one at a time, small increments, and check everything each time you change one of them, because it might just be one like this, or it could be two or three, but we don't want to make several adjustments before checking everything because it could be moving it in a whole other direction. There are a few things separately from tuning effectively that can impact this pretty dramatically. Things such as not having the head seated in a centered manner when you first tune up the drum head and get it to the desired pitch can make it very difficult to clear the head and get everything balanced. Oftentimes, and this actually happened to me yesterday, I found myself working with a drum that wasn't mine and that I didn't install the head on. One side of it had been tuned so aggressively that the hoop was actually not level, and the collar of the head itself had been forced into being out of round and out of level. This means that there's a very limited amount I can do with this because we're not tuning a level head anymore. We're not tuning an even piece of plastic, so pretty much out of gas there. Additionally, it should be noted that if your hoops are bent or out of round, or if your drum is bent or out of round or in any way not level on the bearing edge, you may run into situations where you cannot actually get the drum head in tune with itself. For instance, if you find yourself tuning your drum and two of the spots on it are always higher than the rest, even if you release tension on those lugs. It's happened to me. It's happened to a lot of us. Look out for that. Check the hoops first, and then if they're fine, check the drum out. There are also rare occasions where the flesh hoop, the actual metal ring around the drum head itself, is out of round or out of level. If you find it hugging your drum in a certain direction and that stays when you spin the head on the drum, you may just have a bad head, and that's a fairly inexpensive fix because you just get a new drum head. How do we put this into practice in terms of getting better at this process? The thing that we recommend to do is get your drum as in tune as you can, hopefully pretty cleared, and then experiment with raising or lowering a single lug or maybe two and listening to the effect and then putting it back. Provided that your drum and your drum head are in fairly good condition, you should be able to detune one of the tension rods, listen to it, and then put it back the same amount and retain your complete tuning just as we did here today. It's worth noting that the type of hoops that you have may affect how noticeable this is, how dramatic the effect, how non-existent the effect possibly, depending. So consider that we are using standard run-of-the-mill triple flange hoops today. There are all sorts of die cast and other things out there, so your mileage will vary depending on what you're using. The more we practice these things, the faster we're going to get at both problem solving if something is out of tune, and also getting to a sound that we're looking for if we feel inspired, or perhaps if we're on some kind of job where we need our drums to sound a certain way. It may seem like a lot of time, but it really isn't. And the more that you do this, the easier it gets, and the faster you can get back to the business of playing music.